After a difficult birth, Mr. Brown decided to adopt a dog for his paralyzed son, hoping it would help improve their lives. A few months after the dog became part of their family, something happened that left everyone completely astonished. On a sweltering afternoon in a quiet Montana neighborhood, Samuel Brown was deep in thought, wrestling with emotions as he set out to find what he hoped would bring some relief. Today marked his son's first birthday, and he was determined to get him a gift to remember. The past few months had been overwhelming for Mr. Brown, and the idea of throwing an extravagant animal-themed party had quickly faded. Instead, he had turned his focus to something he believed could truly make a difference: getting a dog. Many had told him that a pet could help his son more than any medical treatment, and because Samuel adored his child beyond words, he embraced the suggestion wholeheartedly. With a clear purpose in mind, he stepped into the animal shelter, where he was instantly surrounded by eager, playful dogs vying for his attention. Among the energetic crowd, a small English toy terrier caught his eye with its curious gaze. Having researched different breeds, Mr. Brown instinctively felt this little terrier would be a perfect match for Ethan. It was small enough to avoid overwhelming him, yet loyal and protective. Exactly what his son needed. The memory of Ethan's birth was still vivid in his mind. When his son had arrived, the delivery room had fallen into an eerie silence. Though Ethan had cried, filling the space with the sound of his strong lungs, the traumatic birth had left Samuel on edge. For what felt like an eternity, he feared the worst, but his baby was here, alive and breathing. Relief, however, was short-lived. Before he or his wife could hold their newborn, the doctors swiftly carried him away. The look on the nurses' faces haunted Samuel as he paced the waiting room, dread seeping into his bones. He could still picture his son lying in a hospital bed when the doctor finally revealed the devastating news. Ethan had suffered spinal damage due to extreme pressure in the birth canal. The fragile vertebrae had been severely impacted, leaving Ethan unable to move his lower body. The likelihood of him ever walking was slim, though not impossible. Clinging to that sliver of hope, Samuel vowed to do everything in his power to support his son. When the doctor suggested intensive physical therapy, he immediately agreed. He would have said yes to anything if it meant even the slightest chance of his son regaining mobility. Holding on to optimism was essential. Unfortunately, his wife didn't share the same perspective. She was shattered by the news, blaming herself despite the doctor's reassurances. Postpartum depression consumed her, turning her into a shadow of the woman she once was. She struggled to connect with Ethan, barely able to bring herself to hold him. Samuel worked long hours to cover medical expenses, leaving her home alone with the baby for extended periods. He knew Ethan wasn't getting enough stimulation. When he suggested adopting a dog, she barely reacted, offering only a shrug. Deep down, he hoped the dog would help her too. Since the grand birthday celebration they had once envisioned was no longer an option, Samuel saw this as the perfect time to bring a pet into their lives. He believed the unconditional love of a dog could make Ethan's life brighter. When his gaze met the English toy terriers, he felt an instant connection. He had read about the breed's affectionate and loyal nature, making it an ideal companion for his son. Some experts even suggested that the physical engagement from a lively dog could encourage paralyzed individuals to push their limits. Samuel wasn't expecting miracles. He didn't believe a dog could teach Ethan to crawl or walk, but he was certain it would make his days more exciting. As he drove home with the newly adopted pup, anticipation filled his mind. How would Ethan react? Would he be scared? Would the dog be frightened of him? The answers would soon unfold. Before heading home, Samuel made a quick stop at the local bakery. It was still his son's birthday, and he knew his wife hadn't baked a cake. Alongside the cake, he picked out a small bow for the dog, a tiny gesture to make the moment even more special. Carrying both surprises, he stepped into the house, feeling a mixture of nerves and hope. As he set the dog down inside, his wife's disapproving gaze met his. "Are you serious?" she asked, frowning. "Now I have to take care of both a baby and a dog while you spend all day at work." Her words stung, But Samuel refused to let his smile waver. He understood her pain and knew recovery would take time. With calm reassurance, he explained that he had already spoken with their housekeeper, who would care for the dog during the day, while he would handle the evening walks. "The terrier will keep Ethan entertained," he added gently. "You'll have more time for yourself." Though she remained skeptical, Samuel held on to hope. This dog wasn't just for Ethan, it was for all of them. He said. She let out a bitter chuckle. "Do you want me to leave our son alone with a dog he doesn't even know?" she asked. "Of course not," Samuel replied. He could feel his anger simmering beneath the surface, but he kept his voice steady. "I just need you to keep an eye on them while they play." "He can't play. He can't even crawl," she snapped. "He will," he said firmly, his tone signaling the conversation was over. She shrugged, took the cake from him, and walked away as he headed to Ethan's room. As always, the baby lay in his crib, clutching a plush toy to his chest. He babbled to himself, but there was no one there to respond with playful chatter. Samuel's heart ached for his son. The boy rarely left his room and had never met another child, but now he was about to gain a lifelong companion. Lifting Ethan into his arms, Samuel showered him with affection before carrying him to the living room. The small dog, still wearing its charming bow, let out a tiny bark as Samuel stepped inside. Ethan's eyes sparkled with joy at the sight of the furry creature, his tiny hands reaching out eagerly. Samuel set him down and took a seat behind him, whistling softly to catch the pup's attention. The dog stepped forward hesitantly, tail wagging with enthusiasm. Ethan extended his little hand, brushing the pup's head before letting out a delighted squeal. In that moment, the atmosphere in the room brightened. Even Samuel's wife couldn't suppress a small smile. As the days passed, the dog became a permanent fixture in their home. Samuel ensured it was fed each morning before work, while the housekeeper made sure it always had food and water. His wife, however, mostly ignored it. The dog was energetic and playful, and soon, Samuel noticed a significant shift in Ethan's behavior. The once quiet and reserved boy was now full of laughter, constantly reaching to be placed on the floor so he could stay close to his furry friend. Each evening when Samuel returned home, his son greeted him with a radiant smile, his babbling improving bit by bit. A few weeks later, even Samuel's wife had to admit that bringing the dog home had been a wonderful decision. Ethan spent most of his time playing with it, and since the pup never left his side, she found herself with more time to rest and focus on herself. She was able to attend therapy 3 times a week, and her spirits lifted noticeably with each session. She also became more affectionate with Ethan, and 2 months later, she even volunteered to take both the baby and the dog for a walk around the block. It was her idea to name the pup Dash. Things were looking up for the Brown family, all thanks to the tiny terrier. As the months went by, Samuel marveled at his son's transformation. The baby who once barely had the strength to lift his arms was now sitting upright on his own. He had even learned to bounce on his bum, scooting after the dog. Dash seemed to understand that his little friend couldn't run yet, so he patiently waited as Ethan inched across the floor, chasing after toys and balls. Ethan's physical therapy sessions finally began yielding the results they had long hoped for. His doctor was pleased, reporting that his core muscles were nearly as strong as those of other children his age. His legs were gaining strength too. He still couldn't crawl, but Samuel remained hopeful. The change extended beyond Ethan. His wife had also come out of her shell. She spent more time playing with both her son and Dash, and Samuel often found her sitting on the floor with them when he came home. Seeing her smile filled his heart with warmth. Dash, with his wagging tail and loyal eyes, had become more than just a pet. He was a symbol of their second chance at happiness. As the months turned into seasons, Ethan continued to progress. His doctor was overjoyed to report that he had started flexing his knees. When the family left the hospital that day, both Samuel and his wife wept tears of joy. Their son had been born with little hope, but since Dash had entered his life, he had defied every expectation. The doctor explained that Ethan's desire to play and chase after the dog was strengthening his muscles and spine. Though he still doubted Ethan would ever walk, he believed that one day the boy might learn to crawl. That day arrived sooner than anyone expected. At 18 months old, Samuel received a video call that made his heart pound in his chest. His wife never called him while he was at work, so he answered with trembling hands, fearing the worst. Instead, he heard her voice, shrill with excitement, and saw the image on his screen. Little Ethan, crawling after Dash. The dog held a ball in its mouth, hopping in place as if daring the child to catch him. Ethan's legs were still bent awkwardly, but he was crawling. More importantly, he was laughing. Pure, unfiltered joy. That evening, Samuel bought another cake, and they celebrated as a family. The energy in the room was nothing like the first day Dash had arrived. Ethan rolled across the floor, giggling as he chased after the dog. His wife smiled, watching their son with warmth in her eyes. For the first time in a long time, everything felt right, and he thought life couldn't get any better. But he was wrong. One calm Saturday morning, Ethan and Dash played in the living room, while Samuel enjoyed the quiet on the porch with a good book. Ethan's movements had improved significantly, bringing relief to everyone. He could now crawl with ease, and Samuel's wife had even caught him playfully kicking a ball. Samuel still smiled whenever he recalled Ethan's second birthday, when they had dressed him as a dog so he and Dash could match. By then, both he and his wife felt comfortable leaving their son alone with the pup. Ethan was still a slow crawler, and Dash's watchful instincts were always sharp. But Samuel was about to learn that his dog had developed an entirely new sense of awareness. In the peaceful morning, where only the rustling leaves and chirping birds could be heard, Dash suddenly began barking incessantly from the living room. Curious about the dog's sudden outburst, Samuel glanced up from his book and called for him. But Dash wouldn't stop. Something was wrong. Yet, nothing seemed amiss. His wife was taking a quick shower, and little Ethan was babbling happily. In the living room, everything appeared normal. Thinking Dash just wanted to play, Samuel grabbed a ball and tossed it toward the pup. But to his surprise, the dog ignored it completely, continuing to bark with urgency. At first, Samuel found Dash's antics amusing, but as the barking persisted, a sense of unease crept in. It wasn't playfulness, it was alarm, as if the dog was desperately trying to say something. Now fully alert, Samuel decided to investigate. Following Dash into the living room, he froze at what he saw. Ethan was standing. His son, whom doctors had said would never walk, was standing firmly on his own 2 feet, playing with his toy soldiers. Samuel's knees nearly buckled, and he had to steady himself against the wall. Tears filled his eyes before spilling down his cheeks, and a loud sob broke from his throat. Ethan turned toward his father, confused by his tears. "Are you sad, Daddy?" he asked, setting his toys down. Samuel choked on a laugh, wiping his face in vain. "No, Ethan," he managed, voice trembling. "Daddy has never been happier." The child giggled and returned to his game, but Samuel, overwhelmed, found his strength and sprinted toward the bathroom. He nearly broke the door down in his urgency. His wife, startled and still in her bathrobe, barely had time to react before he grabbed her hand and dragged her to the living room. And then, she saw. Unlike Samuel, she couldn't keep her legs from giving out. She sank to the floor, overcome with sobs. Ethan blinked at his now crying mother and tilted his head. "Mom, you too," he squealed. Then, to their astonishment, he turned fully to face her. His tiny feet shuffled, hesitant but strong. Samuel's wife gasped through her tears. "Can you come to me, baby?" she asked, her voice breaking. Ethan looked down at his wobbly legs, uncertain. Could he make it? But before he could hesitate, his best friend was already by his side. Dash trotted over, and pressed against him, offering support. With a small hand gripping the dog's back, Ethan took an unsteady step forward. Samuel cheered, encouraging him to keep going. Ethan teetered, nearly toppling twice, but Dash stayed right beside him, moving at his pace, ensuring he wouldn't fall. Step by step, the toddler wobbled toward his mother's open arms, and when he finally lunged into her embrace, even Dash let out a triumphant yelp. The tiny terrier Samuel had adopted a year ago had just taught his son how to walk. Samuel scooped Dash up, hugging the little hero close. He was overwhelmed, not just by what Dash had done for Ethan, but for all of them. In a moment, their dog had defied the odds, brought joy back to his wife's face, and reunited their family in a way they never imagined. Dash may have been small, but his heart was enormous, and Samuel knew he would forever be grateful. Do you believe our beloved animals can work miracles? Have you ever experienced something like this? Let us know in the comments. If you love this story, be sure to like and subscribe. Sometimes, the pets we love change our lives in ways we never expect. Thanks for listening. See you in the next video. Have a wonderful day.